Hi, I am both honored and excited to be able to introduce to you my next guest of the Empowered Wellness Talks, Krissie Lenahan. Krissie is a high school health teacher and the founder of Live Pure Mama. In this episode, Krissie will be sharing more about the toxic issue and how to get clean. Krissie lives in Washington State with her hubby, Joe, and their 7-year-old son, Jacob. When she's not playing games, wrestling, or playing soccer with her son, she is super passionate about empowering women, especially moms, with the tools and knowledge to choose safe products. Krissie herself has struggled with fertility issues and has experienced the loss of loved ones who died of diseases highly linked to the harmful chemicals in many of our mainstream products. One of Krissie's most loves things about being a high school teacher is being able to teach the students. She truly feels blessed to have found this passion and this company and hopes that her advocacy through it can positively impact many, many families. Her end goal is to help you lower your body burden and that of your kids so you can live a longer and healthier life. I met Krissie about 4 years ago at a mom-owned business networking group. And since then, I've been able to follow her journey and be able to learn so many things from her about how to live a toxic-free life. Krissie, thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd love to get us started out by sharing what led you to be so passionate about helping families decrease toxins.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie. It's really, really awesome to be here and be able to talk with you. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
So I think about 6 years ago, I went to a conference for high school health teachers. And there was this session of time, where you get to choose a session, and nothing was really piquing my interest. And so I was like, okay, I'll just pick one. And I ended up picking toxic beauty. Which wasn't really my thing. I wasn't totally invested or anything. And I got in there and it was so engaging and so interactive. And this woman had actual physical products, um, you know, L'Oreal and Suave and Dove and all these products with ingredient cards that had the ingredients actually like bigger so you could read them. And then she had these tools where we could look up the ingredients that were actually on there and see what diseases they were linked to in the products that were completely common that all of us were using. And I sat there and was basically shocked and horrified. I had just at that time been through my first of several miscarriages. And also, as you said, I was a high school health teacher. And I just got so mad. I realized that I had, when you get mad, you're like, oh, ding, ding, maybe that's a passion.
Yeah, the awareness of it so much. Yeah.
Yeah, like that means something to me. And not one doctor that I had talked to about fertility struggles had thought or known to ask me if I knew how to choose safe products. And then I knew that I also had to change the curriculum in my health class to include this. And the third prong was I knew that I had to change it for my family. Like my son was 2 at the time. And I knew then that I had been smothering him with toxic chemicals since before he was born, when he was in my uterus. And it kind of made me feel ill. And so I knew that I had a long learning curve ahead of me. And I started searching for companies that were making truly pure products and being transparent in the way they were doing that, and found that it was way harder than I expected. So then I was like, well, once I found these tools and information and alternatives, I set upon the mission to help other people do it without spending years of research.
Yeah. And that's one thing we had. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story. I really do appreciate that. And I know that's hard things that, we've gone through sometimes is, I think the one thing that we learned in the first talk we did with Dr. Gloria was that it's amazing how our passion that we end up doing things is something that it really hits personally home to us. And I think
Yeah,
especially,
absolutely.
and I
And
think
of
it drives
course,
us.
as I'm also a career specialist, so I talk to high school students about this all the time.
Mhm.
But as you as you find those things that you're super passionate about, those are the things that you're going to be gifted in. That's your zone of genius.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it. Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about how to live a toxin-free life, what we need to look for out there for people?
Absolutely. So I just think having the big picture from the beginning is really important, and not to get overwhelmed in all the details. So the reality is, in the culture and the society that we live in right now, it's absolutely impossible to live a toxin-free life. If you live in the town or a town and you have a home, you will be around chemicals that we would consider harmful all the time, which is just the way it is. So what we need to do is be accepting of that, not let it go, make us crazy, and then find the areas where we can have the biggest, like the most significant impact on decreasing the toxins that we do bring into our body. And so I think the personal care industry is a super powerful place to start, because once you do know what to avoid and what to look out for and how to read those long chemical names on the back of labels, and why Americans specifically need to do that, you can very much decrease your daily body burden. And I think that's a significant piece of your wellness pie. With food, there's just so many preservatives and things that don't get on the label. It's very hard to control all of your air. If we live in the city, you can't wear a mask that filtrates all the air all the time. And so all of these other ways that we bring things into our body maybe actually have a little bit less control over than what we do with personal care. So once you have the tools, it's a really empowering place to start.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how we can look for that in the products too?
Yes. So there's 4 favorite tools that I have to share with you. And the first one is to download the app called Healthy Living. And it's by the EWG, the Environmental Workers Group. And they are a huge, amazing advocacy group that's known worldwide. And they do a lot of research. And the app, the icon that you'll find when you go to download it, whether you have an iPhone or Android or whatever, it's a circle that's green with a white E. And it's free. And it gives you, basically, it'll put a red barcode scanner line up on your phone, and you can go into the store and scan in a product right as you're standing there before you spend money on it. And I love doing that in the store, because I love it when people come up and they're like, well, what are you doing? Are you a product researcher? Do you work here? Are you like a consultant? And so then I get to explain to them that they could be doing this too, to find out, what is safe and what's not. So what happens is, if the product is in there, I'll come back to the fact if it's not, but if it's in there, it'll give you a rating number between 0 or 1 and 10. And so down on the low end of the scale is totally safe, great, not linked to disease and disorder. And up on the high end of the scale, you don't want to get that near your body. So I think it's a very non-biased, great database to use as a resource. And that's my number one resource, because it's fast and because I trust it. So another thing I love about it is that it will give you that rating score. Like, let's say it says it's a 6. Okay, so you're kind of like, meh, that's kind of high. But it will tell you why. So it will tell you, is it because it's linked to fertility problems, cancer, or allergies? So I again think that's super empowering, because it could be that maybe you decide for yourself, okay, because it's linked with cancer. No, thank you. But maybe you decide it's a 6 because it's linked to allergies and we don't have any allergy issues and we're not struggling with allergies and I'm not super sensitive about that. And so maybe in that area, 6 is fine with my family. So you get to decide your own choices about your priorities and your family's needs and your family's health issues. And I think that's great. The bad thing about it, which is not their fault, is that there is no possible way that all of the products can be in there.
Mm.
And it's very often that I scan things in and like 50% of the time maybe, and they're not in there, which can be kind of frustrating, but I still recommend it to people because it's so fast and easy. But it can't be your only resource. You need to have a plan B. So the plan B that I like, that I think is easy, and I can share this with you, Stephanie, but there is it's a pocket guide from my company, and it's a list of the 23 or so most common and worst, most toxic chemicals to watch out for and avoid. And so what I've done, because like it's a hard copy, or you can get it digitally, but you're not going to carry that around in your purse for your whole life. So I just typed it up into a graphic that people could save on their phone. And so I just save it in like a little notes section. And then when I'm in the store, because even I don't have these memorized either, and you don't need to. You don't need to spend brain space on it. You just need to know your tools. So you can bring up the picture and you can just cross-reference, like, does it have that thing in it? Does it have that thing in it? So that's resource number 2, and I'm happy to get any of your followers that guide.
Perfect. So is that okay if something we could put into the show notes too, of a link to that they can get access to that? Awesome. That would be great. Thank you, Krissie.
Yep. And then number 3 is if it's not listed on that guide, because it doesn't list everything, and we'll come to that when we talk about the numbers. And if it's not in that app, then you might be kind of like, well, shoot, I tried 2 of my resources. But there is a website that uses the same database as the app, but on the website, it has more capability. So it's called the Skin Deep Cosmetics Database. And you can go to this website. It's also by the EWG. And instead of like having the full chemical name, like CoverGirl Ultimate Beige Foundation or something, you can type in the individual ingredients, like the long chemical names, which you do have to spell correctly. But then it will give you the same rating, the 1 to 10, and you can decide from that. Now, that takes a little bit more effort. I definitely would not expect everyone to stand in the store and get online and type in all 20 ingredients. But when you might want to use that resource is if there is a product that you love and use at least once a day, like maybe a face lotion, like a moisturizer or your toothpaste. And you know how we go on autopilot and we tend to buy the same thing for like 10 to 20 years?
Yep.
Those are the products. Yeah. Those are the products that you should probably say to yourself, okay, like I've bought this 39 times. It's probably a good idea to know what's in here.
Yeah, let's do an audit of our beauty makeup.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say is sometimes I noticed when especially during the pandemic, I was doing obviously a lot of shopping through any delivery service, is that a lot of times going online, they will have the ingredients listed. So that would be a good time to be able to do the online website check, because you are still at home and you can have easier access if you have a laptop or a computer too. So
definitely. And if you could cut and paste, if you could cut and paste that instead of respelling all those, that would be great.
Have them in there. Yeah. Have them in there.
Yeah. And then the last one, the 4th one, is actually a book that I keep right here. This is a book by Leah Segedy, and she is out of California. It's called Green Enough. You can get it on Amazon. And she's hilarious. Like she actually takes this issue and makes it funny, and she swears a lot, which is funny. And it also contains like 50, I think, DIY recipes. So if you do have time, or, want to do some fun things with your kids or teach about this issue or whatever, that's kind of fun too. But she goes room to room, and it's not only about personal care, but, like fire retardants or the foam in your couch or your cookware. And she also runs a blog and a really large Facebook group, which I highly recommend, called Mamavation. So,
Get that in there too, because that's
another
definitely,
easy
yeah,
resource
great resources.
to join. Yeah. And so she has a team of researchers now that send different samples off to labs, and I really agree and appreciate what they're doing. So I used her blog to buy my cookware and to buy my organic mattress. So all of these things kind of get wrapped up into, just moving as much as you can. Every tiny step is a great step in the direction of non-toxic products and living.
That is really great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And the thing is as you said in the beginning, is about empowering women, especially moms, is these tools are empowering because they are something that you can look at, make decisions for yourself, whether it's important. I especially love the part where you said it decides whether it's linked to cancer or toxin or whatever it is specific. My youngest son suffers from allergies a lot, so that would be something specifically I would look at a lot.
Yep.
But that's a great tool, and it's a great tool to get to teach the kids about how, kids, my children love using their phones. And so why not have them go into the stores and, have them check it. It's make a little scavenger hunt or something for the things that they're specifically using and think be good. That'd be fun.
Yes.
Always trying to find things to keep them involved, but also things that are up their line too of researching stuff too, but
keep them healthy too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's one thing that we did when we first, my story a lot is shared on the blog and stuff, is that we started obviously going into clean eating, and then we moved to more of a plant-based lifestyle. Was one of the first things we did was look at our cooking ware inside the home. And again, one thing is, as you said, it's changing one thing at a time. It can be overwhelming trying to do it all at once. So as you're looking at one item, replace it, check it out to see if it's something you have. It's kind of the same thing that sometimes items go as they get older and can't be used anymore. It's a good time to maybe swap out.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Things we do with the food. What do you think is one of the most important things to avoid if you don't think you can do it all at once?
Well, as far as toxins go, I think the most important one, if you could just try one thing this year, it would be so huge, and that is to avoid fragrance. So that's one thing. Another thing I'll talk about when we get to the numbers, but there are so many fragrance chemicals that are pumped out every year by these chemical companies. And our country has this loophole in labeling that means that companies are allowed to put any mixture of all those fragrant chemicals into their proprietary blend and not tell anyone, including the FDA, what went into that blend. And so the reality is that when you look at a label, if it says fragrant, even though it might be the last thing on there, which means it's the lowest concentration, right? Same with food labels, but it might be the last thing on there, but it could have hundreds of chemicals into that group, that proprietary blend, that they don't have to tell anybody what's in it. And I don't know if you want me to give away the answers, but a huge percent of products that say fragrance have been found by the EWG to contain endocrine disruptors. And endocrine disruptors are chemicals that screw up your endocrine system. And if you forgot your high school science, like I totally did, that is all the biological systems in your body. It's like how your organs work. So it could be that it messes with your heart. It could be that it messes with your brain. It could be that it messes with your thyroid. And that's where it becomes super problematic, because these fragrance chemicals are linked through the thyroid with problems with hormones, and then linked to fertility problems. So that's like I mean, they're linked to all the other stuff too, allergies and cancer and all Alzheimer's, but very directly related to fertility problems. So much that it was interesting when I needed fertility treatments. I was in a fertility clinic, and there were signs on every single door, like every place they could plaster it. They said, I forget the exact weeks, but it was something like every first and second week of every month, don't wear fragrance in this office because that's when they're fertilizing the eggs. And so, like, they know that. The people who work in that industry know that. But fragrance is very, very dangerous for just humans. And so you can't try to make a baby in that
Yeah.
situation. And also, even if you might say to yourself, well, okay, too bad I'm beyond like baby making years. I guess I don't have to worry about that. Well, if you have kids, you might be putting, everything has fragrance,
Yeah.
lotion, sometimes even Kleenex, um, sanitary pads. And then there's the fragrance, in like plugins or car deodorizers or
Absolutely.
everything, dish soap. And so if you have a 3-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 12-year-old, their fertility is
Yeah.
being interrupted potentially. And so if there's anyone around you or in your home that could potentially have babies in the future, it's something to
Yeah.
consider.
Yeah, that's definitely yeah, absolutely. Because in our home, we have to be very careful because the smell itself causes headaches in ourself. And I know, especially that's one thing that's been strong in allergies. I have not worn perfume probably since I was just from that. I know that's a major fragrance, but since I
Yeah,
was younger, because I personally can't handle the smells. I
yeah.
can't walk into a store that has a lot of smells like that to begin with. So for me, that's fortunate for me to have that, but we don't think about the other fragrances that are in products. I know it's wonderful to be able to have the extra wonderful smells and stuff like that, but sometimes we don't think about the
You can
long-term
totally
effects.
get wonderful smells without
Yeah,
synthetic
yeah, exactly.
fragrances. Yeah. And I'm glad you said what you said, that it's good that your body has that. And you're right. I'm glad you're coming from that perspective, because I always tell people with those fragrance allergies, or actually any allergies, that most likely their body is just better at communicating what
Mhm.
it shouldn't be around.
That's a very good point.
And so
Yeah.
that's kind of empowering to think about it that way, that your body is good at communicating with you.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I advocate in eating healthier and whatever you do is listening to your body. And that's a huge thing. That's something I've learned through my own health journey is listening to my body has been a major thing. It took me a long time to get there to be able to
Mhm.
realize when it comes to the foods and how you feel after you eat, but it's the same things with the products that we use. So absolutely a very good
Yes.
point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you, Ted, you were going to talk about a little bit about these numbers. I'd love to be able to hear a little bit
Yes.
more about them.
Okay.
Yes.
So I have I have this thing where I'm not very good about remembering numbers unless it's about the toxic issue. And then it just seems like they help me wrap everything together. So I have a series of cards here, and I'm going to tell you the significance of each of these numbers. So the first one is 168, and that is how many chemicals on average the average American woman puts on her body every day. And usually when I tell people that, they're like, oh, wow, that's so weird, but that's totally not me because I am pretty natural. I don't wear a lot of makeup, blah, blah, blah. But if you really sit down, I urge you to make a list of the products that you do use every day, and you'll be surprised. And there's things that people often forget: toothpaste, body wash, um, deodorant, shampoo, bar soap, all the different times we wash our hands. And what if we do go out in public and you wash your hands at 7-Eleven and then you wash your hands when you drop your kid off at school? That's two different soaps in public restrooms, which are often really horrible. And then you think about, each of those products has about 20, chemicals, good and bad, but it's really easy to get to 168 when you start thinking about it that way. So then you might go, okay, well, how do you know that, a lot of those are bad? Like what's the problem really? Because chemicals aren't necessarily bad, and that's
Right.
true. Water is a chemical, right?
Right.
But what they have discovered is it takes 26 seconds on average for something that you put on your skin to get absorbed into your bloodstream. And I used to think that my skin was like a barrier, and now we know it's a carrier. And science knows this, right? Like there's the stop smoking patch that, uses the skin as a transportation vehicle into your bloodstream. There's the birth control patch, all
Mhm.
those things. Like our skin is super effective at bringing things into our body, which can be wonderful, but it also can be bad if we're not making healthy choices. And so 26 seconds is pretty amazing. I tried this very weird experiment one time after seeing it somewhere like Facebook or Pinterest or something. And I took a piece of grapefruit, a really juicy chunk, and tucked it between my toes. And then you sit back on your couch, just chill out for a while and, whatever. It took, I think it was about a minute and 50 seconds before I could taste it in my
Oh,
mouth. And it wasn't like the full on taste. It was just that like sort of like citrusy, bitter, almost like I licked the peel of the
oh,
grapefruit,
wow.
you know? And so that taste was in my mouth. And that just showed like our body is one huge cool system. And
Yeah, it's
and
amazing.
so what we put onto it really, really does matter. It'll go inside. What you put on will be in.
Yeah, that is a huge thing, especially even, we think about moms, when they're pregnant or anything like that. You think of all the different facets of how, absolutely. I mean, we all know that we love to be able to have, a lot of us love to be able to have a foot soak or something like that, but you never think about, and that's really good. That's another thing of paying attention and knowing your body
Yeah.
and be able just to really be in tune with your body. And those are some major things that I think that are really helpful, and a very good point to be able to make of knowing that what's going in your body is really just listening to your body at the same time, smelling, using all your senses to be able to at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. And imagine if you did that foot soak and you use products with zero toxins, then you're like, maintaining, and that's awesome. But what if you use products that had therapeutic um, effects and none of the toxins? Then you'd be like doing something good for your body.
Right, right. Yeah,
So
that's
a
amazing.
lot of times there's what we call greenwashing, which is when a company will like put all they'll tout all about their natural ingredients on the front of the label, natural oat extract and um, pure eucalyptus oil or whatever. And those are great, those are awesome, and that might make you buy the product. But if you don't turn it over and read all the other potential stuff, you might be having some ingredients that are good for you and some ingredients that are really bad for you, and that does not necessarily even out,
Absolutely.
depending on what those bad ones are linked with.
Yeah, that's just another good important thing is no matter what it is with food, it's again being empowering, reading the ingredients and you determining if you
Right.
feel safe, if that's on your level of whatever when you feel safe. But then I think that's a major thing is reading labels on no matter what it is
Yeah.
really get used to reading the labels on everything is going to be really important, whether it's food or products or if
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you were talking about like, especially if you were pregnant, that's what this next one is about. So 200, so, I've talked about the EWG. They wanted to do a study because they were sort of wondering, like, do these chemicals that we expose ourselves to cross the barrier between mom and baby when baby is inside? And they decided that the best way to figure this out is to study the cord blood, the umbilical cord blood of babies right after they're born in the United States. And they found 200 synthetic, man made chemicals in the cord blood of US babies.
Oh, wow.
And that gives me goosebumps because I just think like, everybody thinks, oh, brand new baby, fresh slate, fresh start. But
Yeah.
what if it's not? What if they come out already compromised because of, inadvertently their mom absorbing these chemicals? Now that could be lots of ways that she could have inhaled it, she could have ingested it, or she could have absorbed it.
Yeah.
So we don't know between those different ways how it happens, but we do know that in the world we live in this country, it's a serious problem.
Yeah. That's, yeah. And I think the thing is no matter what, all of us moms, we're just trying to do best for our kids as we're starting out. And no matter what, it's like you said in the beginning, we can't 100% avoid these toxins, but we can just find out which ones by just being, empowered to be able to make the choices on certain ones that we can do. And, I think that's a major thing too.
Yes. So I've said like in this country and in the United States a lot. So I'm not going to show you these numbers yet because I'm hoping that as people watch and listen later, I would love for them to guess in their own brain first. So my question is, how many chemicals do you think are banned in Europe because of their scientific link to disease and disorder? And then how many chemicals do you think are banned in the United States? So if you think about that for a second, how many are banned in Europe, and then how many are banned in the United States? So there's 1,371 banned in Europe and 11 banned in the United States.
Wow. That is a significant difference.
So that means, and the reason why this is happening is because they have a different system than we do. So they have a required safety testing element to getting products onto the shelves in stores. And companies have to go through this safety testing before they can be released. And that was one of the things that shocked and horrified me in that original workshop that I told you about, because we have no safety testing. And I totally thought we did. I thought, I live in a developed country. We have all this technology. We have beautiful looking labels and clean stores with clean floors. And like what I buy here must be safe. But we do not have a personal care industry that is regulated. It's supposed to be regulated by the FDA, but as you know, they are busy. They are truly busy with all food things. They also do all drugs. They do all medical equipment is under their umbrella. But they have literally come out and said, and I went to their website and read it, that the personal care industry will need to self-regulate.
Oh, wow.
But we are not doing that because why would we? Why would companies pay labs and researchers and scientists to go through several more months before they could put a new product out on the shelves? If no one's holding them accountable, they are not being held accountable. And so that's why American consumers have to be super vigilant and extra aware, because there is no entity deciding or proving or even it feels like even caring, right? That those products on our shelves are safe to buy and safe to use. So at least 1,360 chemicals that have been scientifically linked with disease and disorder are totally common and used widely in our products that we use every day.
Yeah. And I mean, I can understand from the, company standpoint is it cost effective, and knowing even where to reach out to a private person to be able to do that kind of stuff. And I get that and then being aware that it even is, we're trying to empower ourselves to be able to understand that that's possibly a toxic chemical, but yeah, absolutely. And it is another thing that you can do is if the product is actually created and designed in Europe, let's say, then can you have that sent over to you here?
That's a good question. I have a friend who goes to Europe every year or so, and she takes a suitcase for personal care products and she
Oh,
brings them
oh,
back.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, you could be assured that those products would be better than the average products you would buy here. That doesn't mean they're completely toxin free, because there are still even some toxins that I would consider toxins that are still allowed in the European Union.
Right.
Um, but the worst ones, yes, it would be free of all the worst ones. And those are great ones to eliminate, because
Yeah.
we haven't done that. Our system is more based on profit. In fact, a lot of US companies will, if they want to export products, they will make two versions. They'll make
Oh,
a version for export that adheres to all of the regulations in Europe, and they'll make a dirty version that they sell in the United States, because their profit margin is higher
right.
when they use the harmful chemicals, because they're cheaper.
Right. And
They're
then
easier
they're
to
not
get.
being regulated. So then it's not going against any code or anything like that.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yep, yep, yep.
Yeah, it's definitely, that's just another thing is you were going back to about how she talks about some DIY in that book that you
Yeah,
brought up. So that would be, that's a great point is if if you are into it and if you do have the time and are looking into that, is creating some of your own products to
for
be able
sure.
to help eliminate some of the toxins that might be in some of the mainstream products.
Yes, yeah. And just two more. So, I talked about fragrance and how it's a loophole and how it's considered a trade secret, basically. So there's more than 4,000 chemicals currently that can be considered fragrance, but there's hundreds more being pumped out every year. So that number is constantly just getting bigger.
Wow.
So those are the ones that you don't know what's in there and what's not when you read fragrance on the label. And when the EWG did that study about, okay, if it says fragrance on the label, how likely is it to actually contain endocrine disruptors? And they found it was 75%.
Wow. That's a
So
pretty
to
big
me,
percentage.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, maybe you got one that was safe, but if you find a company that's writing fragrance without fully disclosing what that fragrance is, then why aren't they doing that? If it is completely safe, they should be disclosing. And if they're not disclosing, then that Russian roulette of 75% is just not worth it to me.
Absolutely. And is there some things as in like, there's different names for sugar. So not just sugar, you might have dextrose or something like that. Is that the same thing that goes along with fragrance too? That they might have other names that they're under, or we're just
You
going to
know,
see the word
I
fragrance?
you're just going to see the word fragrance or parfum. Sometimes if they're
Okay.
trying to be French and fancy, they'll say
Yeah.
parfum or perfume. Um, and that's the thing, is that you really don't see the names of the chemicals that provided the fragrance, unless if it is a natural product company or they're trying really hard to only use natural ingredients. You will see essential oils,
Okay.
and that's wonderful if used in proper dilution. Like those can be unsafe also. You have to know what
Right.
you're doing, but usually in a product, it's usually pretty safe.
Okay. That's good information to know, because sometimes I know that we're reading the labels and other things might have other names and we might not be
Yeah.
so understanding of what those are, or might not be something we're used to. So
Yes.
those are great points, but thank you. Those are
Yeah.
very, very numbers that are up there. I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting to be able to understand them, but also interesting to be able to really look at them. I mean, sometimes it's just still I in shock on some of them. And so
Yeah.
and I think some people we just don't understand, until we have somebody like you sharing them of what they're about and stuff. And being able to, it just really makes you want to second guess looking at your products a little bit more. Absolutely. And
Yes.
looking at them a little bit more. So thank you so much for sharing that, Krissie. I do
Yeah.
appreciate that. And
Yeah.
be able to help empower our audience to be able to make the choices that are right for them. So that's the most important thing.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you for helping
Yeah.
me do that. I obviously love it a lot, and I'm super passionate about
Yeah. Thank you so
helping
much.
in that way.
And
Mhm.
thank you for providing those tools, because I know most of us have a cell phone and have access to the app, but it's also good to be able to have the other tools. And so you can access that. The other question I have is on the EWG is do they do this all themselves, or does a company have to put themselves onto this list, or is it vice versa coming, just EWG is investigating them more?
That's a really great question. My guess, this is totally a guess, but my guess is that it could be either way. I definitely don't think all of those companies are reaching out to the EWG and
Right.
saying like, "Hey, would you like to have us on
Yeah.
there?" I know they're doing their own research. However, for a while I noticed on the app that when I would scan something in and it wasn't in there, they sent me this error message on the screen that said, "Sorry, this is not in our database yet." And it would ask me if I'd be willing to take a picture of the front label and the
Oh,
back
okay.
label. And I think that was a cool way to like use all of us as little soldiers,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
to beef up their database. But I haven't seen that lately on there.
Okay.
So I think they're getting their information from lots of different sources.
Well,
And
entering
that's
the pandemic, a lot of sources weren't able to be able to keep up on doing things, and maybe
yes,
lowering the amount of people being able to work there during this time. But hopefully it'll get
yes,
back to, as we, start to open up a little bit more, hopefully that'll allow the more resources to be able to happen. And I understand a lot of
yeah,
companies weren't able to stay full staffed on things
yes.
like that kind of stuff too. But those are such great tools. And I know I have booked a personal party with you and been able to learn more about the products, and just being able to, I personally have used some of your products that you've done through Pure Haven, and know that my body, as I said, is extremely sensitive, and they are the ones that do not, I mean, I don't wake up with, I've had the eyes that have swollen or something that has
Yeah,
irritated me, and I don't have that with that. So I am so grateful
that's
to just
awesome.
know that I'm getting a product on my face that my body, again, it's no matter what toxin might be in a product, it's going to affect a person each differently, and that you have to find the right one for you and the right one that makes your
Yeah.
skin or your body be able to handle it. And so that's some great tools, and so much great appreciate for all the information that you've shared. And is there any other thing that you need to add or want to add, or just
No, it
been,
was just such a journey. Like once I started researching and trying to find companies, and then just being disappointed, that I would find one safe product and then, the rest of their line was containing some horrible chemical or something. Um, and another point is that it really is not linked with the amount of money that you spend. So
right?
um, it's not true that the dollar store products are worse than the Clinique counter.
That's a good
Um,
point, because I think that's because a lot of times you do associate thinking by, even, because we think about organic food, the less you take out, the more things cost. But that's a very good point, and that's good to know.
yeah, yeah. So you really do, and oftentimes it doesn't even go for the whole line. Like you really do have to research every single product
Right.
until you find a company where that is their actual stand. That is their
Right.
mission, and they're completely transparent in the way they do it. Then over time, you can get to where you trust one, and that's why I partnered with Pure Haven, because I over time just really believed in what they were doing, and also the education piece, like making the education piece be a really high priority that really fits my values as a
Oh,
teacher,
absolutely.
as well. So that's kind of why, I chose that this as a platform to be able to
Yeah.
share and educate.
Well, thank you. And I've always said knowledge is power. So absolutely, and being able to learn and empower ourselves. And I think that's the most important. Is the Empowered Wellness Talks are about giving you the information that you need to be able to make the choices that are best for you. And I
Yes.
think so. Thank you for sharing. And I am. I would have loved to have been a your high school student back then, because I mean, age wise, it doesn't work out, but because I think that's one thing that we don't necessarily think about, is being able to have a health teacher that wants to share the other things that are really important to them, and be able to give that
Yeah.
gift to the students is
Thank
absolutely
you.
amazing. So thank you so much for being
Yes.
here. I thank you for being our third guest of the Empowered Wellness Talks, and I hope to have you
Absolutely.
back on a future episode. So thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much. That
you.
was really fun, Stephanie.
Yes,
I
thank you.
appreciate the time a lot.
Thank you.